7:02. Trustee Dahlman should be here, but we'll move on. Welcome to the Village of Winnetka Village Council Study Session, October 14th, 2025. We'll call this meeting to order, and let's mute our cell phones and other electronic devices so we don't interrupt the proceedings. And I'll ask Kristen to do a roll call for attendance.
Trustee Handler.
Here.
Trustee Albinson.
Here.
Trustee Orsick.
Here.
Trustee Dahlman.
Here.
Trustee Apatoff.
Here.
Trustee Myers.
Here.
President Dearborn.
Here. Okay, thank you, Kristen. We'll move on to item 2, public comments. I'll ask if anyone in the audience wants to speak about an item not on tonight's agenda. So if you're here for the post office, you get to wait around for a little bit, and then you can speak. Anyone like to speak on something not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, and we'll move on to the item of the meat of the matter tonight, the discussion of the post office. Tonight, Village Council will be provided with the various options for demolition and site restoration at the existing post office site, project planning, and use of public engagement. We have Scott Mangum here to talk about it. We have Jim Bernal to talk about it. And this is obviously not a new issue for this village. In fact, it's quite, and Scott will get into this a little bit, it's quite an old issue. But we are raising this to a high level, high priority level right now. And we want to kind of accomplish two things tonight. We want to deal with what's there right now. How are we going to address that issue, the demolition, what do we put there in the meantime? And then we want to establish a roadmap for the future. And we're really here to provide staff with some policy direction and how we want to proceed on that. And so we'll get some comments from the public here, but we're interested with everyone's thoughts on this and how we move forward. So with that as a backdrop, Community Development Director Scott Mangum will provide a brief background, and then Engineering Director Jim Bernal will present demolition and site restoration options. Scott will come back to present public engagement options. We'll bring it back to council for some questions and thoughts. We'll go to the public for public comment, and we'll bring it back here for policy direction at that point. So Scott, why don't you start with some background, and we all received your memo, which we appreciated, but maybe you can embellish on that.
Sure. Thank you, President Dearborn, and good evening, Village Council and members of the public. So stated, planning to just give a brief history of the site. As mentioned, the site has been looked at before a number of times for study. So as you can see here on the screen, the comprehensive plans have looked at it way back from the Bennett plan, and then more recently, since the village acquired the site in 1982, the comprehensive plans completed in 1986, 99, and 2023 have all had references to this site, looking at different options there between mixed use and open space options. The most extensive study of the site occurred as part of the ad hoc post office committee that met a number of times between 2004 and 2008. They also came up with a number of different ideas for the site and some guiding principles there that were ultimately adopted as a resolution for the Village Council. Then the downtown master plan, again, looked at this as one of the components of the master plan. There are 10 different concepts that were developed for that. Those are included as attachments in the staff report in the packet this evening. The downtown streetscape and signage plan also took a look at this site, principally the streetscape and the diagonal parking along both sides of Chestnut being part of that. And then most recently, the public plaza concept plan that was developed along with Lakota that former President Rintz brought out. So with that, I'll turn over to Jim to talk about demolition and site restoration options.
Sure. Thank you, Scott. Good evening, everyone. So there's two options that we... Closer? Oh.
It's closer, should be fine.
Can you hear me?
Can everyone hear back there? Here, Jim, why don't you
If you could make it a little louder, that would be a lot better.
Yeah, just into the microphone if it's too far.
I feel like a rock concert. I have to get right here. Okay. So you're welcome. This evening, what I'm going to do is present two options that the engineering department developed as it relates to the restoration of the site. I think we were in a consensus as it relates to the demolition part of the building. We've had that analyzed for environmental issues. We have a rough estimate of cost for that demolition part. And then it's the two concepts that we evaluated as to the site. What do we build back once the building is demoed? So the first option that's here this evening is option one. Would be to demo the building from its current site, fill the hole in, level the area out, place a soil layer on top with black dirt, add some additional parking along the side so there's a consistency on both the north and the south side, and then reestablish that with grass. So that would be the first option. I'm sorry, can you go back to that one more time? Yeah. So there you go. So the conceptual estimate that we have at this point right now is $592,000. So in the proposed budget that you'll see when staff comes back, this is the option that we're proposing at this time. This can obviously be modified, but this is what's in the draft budget at this time. Sorry, that was it. So the second option that we had looked at was to demo the building, fill the area in and relevel it, but utilize the space in a little bit different type of a usage. One of the things that we here in the engineering department was the use for additional parking spaces. So we developed a concept to basically extend and add additional parking spaces. This would add primarily 2.5 consistent rows of additional parking that's there. There's 99 additional parking that we would be adding to the site, which would be a substantial improvement for that area. It would include additional ADA parking spaces, the addition of consistent overhead lighting, so to improve the lighting within the parking area, and create a consistent island area through there as well. So this was the second option that we had looked at. Now, this option is slightly a little bit more, but there's pros and cons to each option. And I think as the discussion goes along, if anybody has any questions about the pros and cons, let me know. We took a look at that. So that's the two that we had.
Thanks, Jim. Those are the two options we're seeking input on as far as the demolition site restoration. Then as far as more long-term and what to do with the site. And
Why don't we break this in two parts? Sure. Sorry. Why don't we take this in two parts? Let's talk about the demolition here real quick and get everyone's thoughts on what the preferred path would be. Tina?
Yeah. So how much, because there's a substantial amount of the cost is importing dirt. I'm assuming it's got to be clean dirt. It can't come from the landfill. So how much of the cost is to level the site, whether it's for green space or additional parking?
Okay. I can see if I can find, I don't have the breakdown of the cost
I mean,
component.
it's got to
It's
be like
$175,000.
60%,
175,000 for
And
the
then the-
demolition.
And then the demolition, we don't have a third option of waiting till we figure out what we want to do with the site. Is there a need to demolish the building now? And have that
That's
be
what we had all decided at our last study session, that we were going to, yeah.
in 2022?
No, the study session we had last year, we came out of it, as I recall, saying, or deciding that we knew we wanted to demo it and do something with it, so it didn't become an eyesore with a vacant building, and
I guess I don't remember that. I'm just curious if
I
there's.
thought that's what we
I'm
had
not sure either.
decided.
But I think
Well, I
since.
think that's why
Double
they
cost.
prepared that, but anyway, okay.
But in any case, I'm just curious what, what's the environmental condition? I'm assuming there's asbestos.
There's asbestos, correct.
Yeah, so we'll be disposing of the asbestos to an approved landfill. But is there anything other than that? We don't want another one Winnetka where it's sitting there rotting that people could break into and all that stuff. But I'm just curious if there's something other than it's an eyesore and it has environmental conditions in it.
Yeah, so the two big components are asbestos and lead that's its interior to it, so that is pretty common with older buildings. The building itself was structurally sound, but the roof membrane on top had failing issues to it. So there's infiltration of leaking inside, so there's some mold issues that took place that's been remediated once, but it would require the replacement of the roof component, and I want to say when my predecessor, Steve Saunders, were here, we looked at that, and I want to say it was in the tune of $150,000, $175,000 to redo that roof membrane. It's been a while, so don't quote me on that specific, but it was a hefty investment into it. Those are really the critical components on there.
And then one last question. Was there any terms and conditions with the U.S. Postal Service vacating the building for them to do any demolition? Or did they build the building? Did they have any responsibility to the decommissioning of the building? It just seems like a lot of money just to be a placeholder. And I was just curious if there was any ability to look to the current tenant.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. I'm not familiar with the
Okay.
details of the original
It'd
agreement.
be worth dusting off the contracts.
I'm assuming there isn't, because I'm
It's
sure.
quite an old lease, and that's not part of the lease provisions, and we've been month to month extending multiple
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
Who built the building? Do we know? Did they build the building? They must have.
They must have, it was so customized.
It was built in
Kind of a
1958.
custom-
I know
Yeah.
that.
I don't have that
I don't have
history,
that
unfortunately.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have some
Okay.
questions?
Well, I think, Tina, to your point, though, the some of the costs, though, we're going to incur now or later. We're going to,
Well, maybe
Demo-
not. I mean,
I mean,
because,
we have to
gotta
demo the
demo
building
it,
at some point,
yeah, but,
and we have to remove the asbestos at some point. So those, I mean, I think maybe what you're trying to get is what would be the cost that
Well,
wouldn't necessarily
I mean, I'll let other-
contribute to the ultimate project.
yeah, I'll let other people ask questions, but, at one point, we were going to take advantage of the grade, right? So, that was something, the natural grade of the site with the loading dock. And then, there's other options, whether this is, a community space or a mixed-use project, those are all things that I think are still in play. It sounds like based on, conversations I've had, but those are just some of the questions I had, but I'll
Scott?
listen.
I mean, so I think what you're getting at, I think what we all probably are thinking is, if we're going to clear the site and do one of these two options, and we're going to start that in, let's say, the weather gets decent enough and you can start it in February, or maybe even March, and it's going to take 5 months, so we're kind of got a nice site by summertime, and then we turn around in the fall and we start building something else, how much have we wasted? So I guess it's a two-part question, right, which is, of the, call it $600,000, there's a portion of it, demolition, which we have to do no matter what. There would be some wasted cost, how much would that be? And then I think the other question is to us, which is, do we time box whatever group we launch to come up with an idea to say, you got to have an answer in 6 months, right? Are we willing to do that? Because if we are stretching out into 27, then it does make sense not to have an eyesore sitting there.
Yeah, but you're right, but it is a timing issue, because if it's 6 months, we can save $400,000 for the village.
Great.
How do you not look at that hard?
I agree with that, but I would also like to say we've been looking at this spot since 1986 or something, and so I would be a little concerned if we left it, that it would be an eyesore for at least a year, if not 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. I'd like to think we can have this whole thing started and moving, but I would rather not have an empty building for a long period of time.
We have not talked about this timing as a group, but it would seem to me that in the conversation that Scott's about to initiate, there's going to be a period of public engagement, and then there's going to be a design review, a design firm, architectural firm retained to take what the public engagement provides us and come up with a plan. And so I personally don't envision this to be 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, I think that the hope I would have is that we have an answer on where we're going, by springtime, and then we have a firm that can get us there pretty quickly. So whether we mothball this, Jim, for a period of time, I don't know how long you can mothball it for.
Well, it'd be a repeat of one Winnetka. So how long does the roof membrane last? If we're okay with the building being closed and confined, understanding that there could be black mold that's developing on the inside as base of that, or that's a policy question as it relates to it, but I don't have concerns that the building's going to fall down in the next, 2 years. It's just the interior component of it.
But Bob, would you say, best case, we start construction on something, a public space or a multi-use building, in late '26, early '27? So the question is, are we willing to just have kind of an empty building that's boarded up for a year?
Can I just suggest, I think it's highly unlikely we would be able to put a shovel in the ground on any project
I'm
within
thinking.
12 months.
Engineering draw, I
So
mean,
that's, I'm just saying, that's best case.
Bob mentioned, we're skipping a little cart before the horse on making maybe a decision until we hear what the recommended next steps are, but Bob and I serve on the post office, whatever we want to call it. Liaisons or, and if there is a public engagement piece, that takes months. Then there's an RFP, RFQ process to go hire whatever that thing we want to do. And then there's the design process and then the public engagement through that. And then there's the approval, then there's the permitting, then there's the bidding. I mean, my guess is at best, we're talking 2 to 3 years before we have a shovel in the ground, which is actually, I think, par for the course relative to a public, project, so to speak. So I agree with Bob, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, and maybe we do need to understand a little bit more what the next steps are. I would offer up my personal comments relative to these two options that we discussed with staff. The idea here is that, from what I understand from staff, the building is in a state of disrepair. I understand completely the concerns that if we mothball the thing, maybe it doesn't look that bad, but it might add costs later on because of environmental issues that are created. Tina, your comment, yes, there would be additional cost, whether you're going with option 1 or 2 as a temporary fix, right? You got to cut and remove whatever your fill is. You've got to replace it with some other temporary fill. Doesn't have to be structural, right? So there's going to be extra costs with that. But I think then the question is, maybe there's the third option is option 1 with grass, option 2 with a temporary parking lot, option 3 with mothballing the existing building. My personal reaction is if we know it's going to go, and knowing that it likely is going to could be 24 to 36 months before we do anything, and this is truly the center of our town, I have concerns about mothballing a building of that prominence at that location for that length of time.
yeah,
Okay.
I just can't see that.
Well, I mean, to be clear, I don't think, I don't disagree, but I don't want, if there's black mold that grows in there, regardless if it's there today or in 3 years, it's still going to the same site, right? Because of all the asbestos.
The remediation is the same.
Yeah, so I don't want anyone to think that a building that stays vacant is, other than the natural cost of increasing in demolition, like, that's not going to affect that. But
Okay.
I don't disagree.
The option, so if I could, the option, depending on where the council decides to land for what we're putting there, either temporary or permanent or wherever that lands, the type of backfill that you use does play a role in this a little bit.
I'm sorry, what, Jim?
The type of backfill
the
that you
type of-
use to fill that area in does play a role in this. If you're putting a structural component as it relates to, let's say, parking or something like that, you'd want to use something of a more granular type thing. We've estimated that because you're going to be building structural. You'll have vehicles that'll be sitting on top of it versus backfilling, let's say, potentially with clean clay, and then having an area where you're just having more people walking on it and not heavy equipment. The one other consideration, wherever the council lands or wherever the community moves forward, is remember, as part of the master streetscaping project, Chestnut Street needs to be reconstructed from Elm Street all the way to Oak Street, and that requires the modification of the roadway so that we now get the angular parking on the east side and some of the other, so there's a lot that's involved in the, whatever the design component is that gets built within there, that's the time frame that you're referring to. We'd have to, the permitting component, the IPA, all that design component, that still has to be developed. That hasn't been yet.
So Jim, the parking, the angled parking on Chestnut there, that would occur, if you had your druthers, that would occur at demolition of the building?
No, I'm
at that
saying
time?
the master plan needs to include that, so we just want to be cognizant about how we backfill and what we leave the site with, and then how do we build the other phase that's attached to it, which is Elm Street.
But could you do the angled parking at that time?
You could, but that's not, you're adding at least $1 million plus to these
Okay.
costs, so that's something that I don't think,
Right, understood. Okay.
we left that part out.
Scott, why don't we move on to the next, future conversation on what the options are for public engagement and the path, kind of taking Kirk's point in terms of timing, on how this might work.
Sure, so looking at what to do beyond the existing building that's there, took a look at, and we'll present you a couple options for how to move forward and how to get public engagement. But did, as a starting point, look at the recent 2025 Winnetka Council Caucus Survey. So they produced a document that kind of analyzed the survey, finding that about a quarter of the residents that responded to the survey, and I believe there's 700 plus responses to the survey, preferred an outdoor park or year-round communal space, and another almost 17% wanting a space to congregate with indoor and outdoor flexibility and a space for kids to play. So they suggested about 41% want the space to long-term become some sort of place to congregate or be active. The other kind of couple categories that they grouped together were that 38% of the respondents favored a mixed-use component there, either residential, retail, or service. And then the respondents were split on whether that should include housing, so whether it should be the vertical mixed use or not. And so the recommendation of the caucus was that the village council shall pursue public engagement by engaging design professional. They'll evaluate the future uses of the site and soliciting further public input on the site options available to determine the best use of the site. So that's a little bit of background information, kind of recent data points that we have. So with that, thinking about a couple different options. One would be to issue an RFP or RFQ for a landscape architecture or architectural firm to provide programming, confirmation, and conceptual design services for a public plaza or outdoor gathering and performance space. So this is really if the council feels there's consensus to have that public purpose here, then that would be the way to go to seek a designer with that expertise. So that would be similar to the path that the village was on in issuing the request for collateral information for some designers a couple of years ago. So that would be to get that kind of design professional there. Again, if it's confirmed that this is going to be a public space and kind of purely a public space. The note here, and again, looking maybe a little bit further ahead, is just the construction of a purely public space is likely to be financed by the village, minus any potential grants that could be available. And then the next option would be if the village is looking to more broadly look at how the site could be used, to contract a land use planning consultant to perform that direct public engagement, analyzing the options ranging from fully public gathering open spaces to potentially commercial or mixed-use developments that devote a portion of the site to a public use. So maybe there's a plaza on the corner of the site and other development around it. So those are really the two options there, and it's just finding the right person or firm to do that kind of outreach, depending on which option.
Can I interject on something? I guess I look at this, a fair amount of work has been done on this and studied. I feel like we're kind of like, let's jump to these things. I mean, I think if we're looking at this, people, especially liaisons, when Chris Rintz looked at this, he had one point of view, and over time he came to it a completely different point of view. And that was based on the Edward Bennett plan. He's one of the most historic architects and planners of the day. And I guess I would hope this body would look at that plan and see what was maybe not to the letter, conceptually, what was planned for this village by one of the premier planners in the world. And then some of the work that's already been done beforehand, before, as we jump into ordering new stuff as well. Let's get some perspective on where we've been as well. 'Cause I don't think we have.
Okay. Thoughts? Kim?
I'm rereading option 2 here, because to me, it seems like this is combining two concepts. To me, there's the timing of when we ask for additional public input, and I'm all for gathering public input, but we have gathered a tremendous amount, and we have a pretty good direction here from the results of the caucus survey, versus starting with knowing or using this as a guide, going out and looking for some concepts, then engaging the public, which you mentioned again, a second one, to react to more specific ideas. I'm worried that even the best firms that go out now will just get the same information. Everyone will say, yes, I want open space, yes, I want parking, yes, I want retail, yes, I want a brew pub. We'll get everyone's wish list, and we won't necessarily be any farther ahead versus having people react to something specific. Along that line, even though we're not going to use that Lakota plan, just having that as a prop when we were talking to people over the last couple of years at the farmer's market, I think we got better input by having something concrete that people reacted to. They reacted to the idea of the sloped seating. They reacted to the little sketch of a performance stage. They reacted to the gateway into the event. There was something specific, and I think we got some good information that's supported by this. So I'm trying to read these two options, and I have to say, at first glance, I'm not crazy about delaying this and going out yet again now to get more general direction. I think we have that.
So, great comment. I guess the question, because this came up when we were having our meeting, what is the direction? I think that's the question. Because can you go back to the slide with the caucus results? And this is, we have two totally different directions, and we have, I would say, not necessarily significant, but we have a lot of feedback in one direction versus the other, and they're not the same thing. So I'm just sort of echoing what was discussed when we had the prep meeting is, what is the direction? Do we feel confident that we can pick one of these paths?
Go ahead, Scott.
So this reminds me of when I was sitting on the new TRIR strategic plan. And this was before the school was started, right? They gathered community members from all over, and they said, blank sheet of paper, come up with your design. And you go through that process unconstrained, and what you come up with is a $400 million building, right? And you take that to the community, and they reject it. We want to avoid that, right? But we also don't want to just retread ground that has already been retread. And I think the third thing is that I think the caucus survey is very good, but I think many of us have served on the caucus. There's a constraint, which the caucus survey always has, which is you can never get enough detailed information in the question so that people evaluate trade-offs. So what I think we should do is we do have kind of two options that are somewhat built out, right? We have these Lakota designs of possible multi-use buildings or facilities there. We have kind of a public space, public square concept. I would suggest that either we or a subgroup come up with some additional parameters. Are we saying to the village, we will spend any amount of money to build the best public space? Well, no, right? We're not going to probably go to the community and say, we'll spend $10 million, right? There's some amount which we're saying we can spend on construction. There's some amount, and this has been talked about, around operations and maintenance, right? If you're going to have a public space, you need to activate it. Well, that's going to be ongoing costs. So let's get that data, and then let's go to the community and say, all right, here are some options. Public space, this is about what it might cost, order of magnitude. You could do these kinds of things. Here's about how much it would cost on an annual basis to activate. Here's multi-use. it would be maybe this many units, about, plus or minus, it would deliver this kind of value, and have people react to something that's a little bit more tangible than just saying, what do you want?
Well, I mean, if we think about the model we've used for streetscape, we have had 3 or 4 different, whether it's Hubbard Woods, I can't remember the Elm Street one, and also Indian Hill, they would have 3 different proposals. And so I don't know if you follow option 2 and you engage a consultant, you really just say, tell us what you want, because certainly the consultant could distill all this information. Some are very specific. Some probably aren't really in play anymore because we know we have a parking shortage, right? So anything that looks like a more, if it's not open space and it's got, 3, 4 buildings, that's probably not going to be in play unless there's substantial parking improvement. So, we do have a methodology or a history in the last couple of years of just, putting up 3 different options, and that would be, the liaisons would have to work with the consultant to really distill what those would look like. But my only concern about relying too much on the survey, at the end of the town meeting, they said more people, I don't know if this is fact or not, maybe somebody knows the facts, that more people attended the town meeting last Wednesday night than voted in responded to the survey. So that's less than 700 people responded to the survey. And if you look at the differential between 38 and 41%, I mean, that's, in my mind, statistical deviation. I mean, that's within the, a statistical deviation for error, given the small sample size.
I don't know that that's true, Tina.
It is statistically reliable.
But even if there were more people that
just-
responded, it's still, the questions in the caucus survey can't delve into the
I don't think they're
trade-offs.
whatever.
I think
Yeah.
when Kirk and I met with staff and so on this issue, we had the same conversation.
Yeah.
The Bennett plan that Chris Rins presented, that had a fairly good reception to it. But I think that we felt that we needed to go back to the public and confirm some of this. And so, again, I didn't anticipate that to be a 6-month, 8-month project. I think, one firm that was mentioned was Tesca. They know this village. They could coalesce a few ideas and bring them to the public and get thoughts. But I think, it was a matter of trying to confirm that before we go forward and ask the public to come forward with thoughts they have on it. I mean, maybe we learned something, a different way to do it. My recollection is that the Bennett plan concept, I think we had in the capital budget as about $8 million. Part of this is money. I mean, we can't ignore that fact. We have other capital investments that are very substantial. We talked about some last week. And, so there might have to be some public-private something or other that comes into play here that will help, monetize some of the property, potentially. But we can't do that until we get some good public feedback on it to sort of narrow it around. So I agree with you. We come up with we give the land use firm some parameters, and they roll it out professionally. I think, Kristen, that's kind of what we talked about. And we don't give them an open-end timeframe.
Yeah.
It's a project that has to have it, they come to us. Obviously, it would take some time to retain the firm and that type of thing, but, I don't think it's a 6-month project. I think we get some solutions or some ideas back that they can coalesce around, and then we can talk about a design firm.
But, I agree with that approach. I think we time box it. I think that, but when we do ask, when we go to the public, I think we need to make sure that it's not just a blank sheet of paper. Let's, our zoning laws are constraints,
Right.
let's make
Agreed.
costs a constraint also, and let people know that there are trade-offs here.
Agreed.
Agreed. Actually, Scott, everything you said previously, I think was spot on relative to what the discussion with staff was about. And that's why option 2, if you could just roll back to that or roll forward to that. That's why we want to be at least setting the parameters, right? And I to simplify this, we don't want the unlimited options
Yeah.
right now. I think that based on whether it's formal or informal, the caucus feedback and the previous discussions, all the work that's been done in the past, at least we're trying to simplify in these two
Yeah.
paths. And I think just to take a step further, the other discussion we had with staff about this was, if we go right to hiring, let's say, the design firm that will do the final product, hiring a landscape firm to do more of a Bennett plan is a lot different than hiring an architecture firm to do a public-private partnership mixed-use development. And we don't want to limit ourselves by throwing out a wide net, and where only we can then qualify the firms that are capable of both. That's going to put us at a disadvantage and also could cost significantly more, not necessarily from a time standpoint, but from a cost standpoint. That's why the baby step approach to validate the data points that we have with these two options, and maybe there's some derivative that we learn through that engagement process. And then after that point is then to go in with a much tighter RFP, RFQ process that we can now concurrently spend the time to kind of figure out.
Yeah.
Then jump right on that. And then I think we'll be ahead of the game by then engaging the correct firm for the correct scope of work.
Okay?
I think those sound like very good ideas. We've got two totally different paths, and, you know, we got so far along the one plan is at one point we were talking about what architect we were going to use, and then that never happened. And the caucus seems to show a closer, even if it's a small amount of people, like that there might be other ideas out there that have a lot of popular support. So I think it makes sense to put two different ideas out and get some more feedback on it.
What do you
Okay.
mean,
Wait,
different
I
ideas?
think they're asking us to choose option one or option two.
Two different ideas being multi-use housing
Yeah.
versus a public
Or-
lot.
Yeah, that's what Scott
Or
was saying. Take,
combination.
go out.
I think there's a whole
Or firms
spectrum
that
there.
could
I mean,
do the
like
whole, either one, right?
I mean, there's a whole spectrum there. I mean, it can, the property, if we got rid of the surface parking and splurged on underground parking, there's enough room there to have an open public space, perhaps a small strip of retail. So saying it's one thing or another at this point, I think, is short-sighted. I
Well,
mean,
see,
we
that-
all-
okay, so that's, I
mean,
guess
we've
where I
all-
have a
We've all
difference.
said this is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. That was our last study session, that we were going to, quote, look at world-class architects to truly do something special.
Special for this.
And I guess that's where my question is like, if we said, all right, let's take the 120 parking spaces, let's put them underground. Well, that's $7 million right there. Now we're going to build a facility, let's say it's another 3 or 4. Are we willing as a village to say we're going to spend $10 million on top of the electrical stuff we know that's coming?
Correct.
I guess that's where I'm just saying, if we're willing to do a blank sheet of paper, we could end up there, and then we have the question. Or do we say, let's put a parameter around it and say, you know what? The solution is going to be boxed within $8 million or something.
I'm not ready
Yeah.
for that.
I didn't think there was, I guess that's, this is the last, as we said in here, this is the last open, this is the middle of our village, the last open space we have. I'm not sure if we want to incrementalize. I mean, I don't know if we want to be bound by, I'm not looking for a $40 million plan, but there are certain elements that we're constraining ourselves that I would think would make this truly a world-class type of development.
This is like, and, you know, this is like a balloon. You push on one side, it goes out the other side. I see Terry back here. I mean, she's got parking on her mind. I have no doubt about that. And, you know, if you start building on it, you're going to, underground parking for $7.5 million or a 2-level parking. I mean, we sort of, I think the idea here would be in option 2, to hire a land use firm of some sort, provide some parameters. Scott and staff and so on would provide parameters. Maybe we bring that back to the council for a discussion and let them go through the public engagement process and see what comes back. And then, to Kirk's point, then you have an idea of what kind of design firm, architectural firm you might be interested in retaining, and then we can have a path going forward. But it seems to me we have to get some more public engagement on this. I mean, I'm not looking to retread 50 years of work here, you know, but you know, we have, I don't think we're in a position here to say that that Bennett plan is absolutely the right plan right now with no incremental development on the property, because we may need that for financial reasons or other reasons. And so I don't know what it, you know,
I'm not saying it is either, but I think we at least need to revisit where we were, or what the thought was, and what, you know, somebody with his stature had in store for this village as a context, because there's a whole level of people will never even know
And I
what
don't
it is.
disagree, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, I don't know if
just-
it's right or wrong, but you have to at least have this
I just don't
context.
want to sit here in 6 months' time and be faced with a $20 million plan that we're now saying, well, geez, that was a waste of time because we can't afford it.
correct.
Right? Let's make sure that
Yeah,
if
I'm fine with that.
if we say we can afford 15, all right, let's make sure we constrain that, right? We know that underground parking is going to be a lot of this, so I just don't want
Well, why
to
don't,
waste time.
What I'm hearing is, I think we're all saying the same thing, that we want to have some better, we want engagement, we want to confirm direction before we dive in to start drawing stuff,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
yeah.
Scott, is that a direction we could go in and
I'm
talk to
so
firms that could provide that public engagement piece to us with some tight parameters on cost and certain elements of the project?
Yeah, I think I'm hearing option 2 that's on here, and then it'd probably be good to know more about what those parameters are.
Okay,
as
that's
far
what I'm getting concerned about, is what the parameters are, because if we're setting really strict parameters, we're throwing out the whole idea of, let's really open our minds here to something different and unique. If we just say, oh, it's going to be $8 million, we've shut off the whole door. I'm not, you know, you all know me, I'm far from reckless with,
Right.
with money at all. But I really feel I'm concerned about what the parameters would be and how we'd come up with that, and we're shutting the door too early on different ideas.
So
maybe
maybe you just have them come up with, you know, the different plans with, you know, kind of rough estimates as, because nobody's going to give us a solid budget, right? Because there's no construction drawings, right? So maybe they just, if they give, you know, I think there's a lot here that somebody who's a professional in that space could distill it down to 3, 4, maybe 5 different options with different price points associated with it, ranges. I mean,
And when we
that's
talk
some-
about financing, we have talked about public-private partnerships, so the net to the village might be different
Correct.
with a bigger plan,
Right.
if that can be worked into it. So again, I hate to put, at this point, like a real strict dollar.
Well, I think the parameters, Kim, would be kind of pretty large scale. You know, parking is needed. Some cost parameters. I mean, you know, we can't have an $80 million project. I mean, it's just, you can't do that. And so I think there would be some. It would have to be fit into the neighborhood, the retail, and so it would have to all have to be high quality. I mean, so there would be some general parameters around it, but I agree, you're not going to restrict the conversation.
Well, and I think one parameter is, I don't think, unless we can have this discussion, I don't think anybody wants to see a solid city block
Correct.
built there,
No.
right?
It's not one Winnetka.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
correct.
So then you know right there that there's probably going to be an open space Bennett plan. I mean, worst case, like worst case from a development perspective, you're going to have a portion of the site reserved for view corridor, some sort of open space, right? So we can give that parameter, how to best do that. You know, at the time that the ad hoc committee was working on it, the library district was in play.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is still something that could potentially be there, but I know that the Music Institute could be relocated. That's also something that those conversations could happen. I don't know if they have the money to do it, though. But my point being, those types of uses, you know, and having a modern take on the amount of retail needed, whether, you know, that's even something that's really there, or is it really more housing? I mean, so I think the buckets are much more defined than they were even in 2016 or 2018.
Okay.
Put it another way, the idea with this option 2 is that we're going to establish our program. If anyone here has designed a house or a building or any project, right? And Bob, I'm echoing everything you said. It's not just about the wish list of everything you want. I want 6 bedrooms and 10 bathrooms. I want indoor pool, right? It's like, we have a budget, so that is part of the program. And that's the idea with option 2, is we're going to establish what our program is before we start then truly drawing what that thing is.
Yep, exactly. Well, I know we have some smart people in the audience here, so why don't we, at this moment, go into a public comment on this agenda item, and I'd ask for anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this issue, maybe raise your hand and let me know if you want to speak or not.
As a point of order, can they speak on the short-term solution as well, the,
I'd say they can speak on anything related to the post office.
okay.
So, first, how about Warren, come on up. If you want to introduce yourself, you can. I was reprimanded the other day when I asked someone to introduce themselves, but
Warren James,
there we go. Okay, thank you.
40-plus year resident, 38 years in the development business.
Oh, by the way, Warren, 3 minutes, that's our public comment.
Make no small plans. I would encourage you to look at this site, not just in 2 dimensions, but in 3. Your view line from Village Hall to Dwyer is interrupted by the building, but they're roughly at the same elevation. In the middle, you drop down to Chestnut 5-6 feet, and then when you get to the back of the post office, you're down 8 feet. I would strongly advocate looking at underground parking, building up a plinth, and realizing that you can capture the much-needed parking and create that connection from town, from the Village Hall to Dwyer that was envisioned, way back when. And in the meantime, you can supplement retail on Chestnut, and you can integrate modest residential or other uses on Oak. And you're really trying to link uses, you're trying to activate uses. I would discourage what I viewed as a duplicative plan that was presented 3 years ago, in that we have a phenomenal location for our farmers market. It's been wildly successful, and in retail, number one, drive-by traffic. We capture all the drive-by traffic. We have parking, we have bathrooms, we have storage, we have everything over there, and we have an adjacent park. Dwyer is activated by children. Let's find other uses to flank that central green and put the parking, the much-needed parking underground.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Others? Come on up.
I'm not so eloquent, so I wrote my comments before. Good evening. Thank you for the chance to speak. Is there feedback?
You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Emily O'Brien. I live in the neighborhood right by Dwyer, in fact, and for my family, like so many others, Dwyer, or as my kids call it, Blue Park, is really an extension of our backyard. It's where kids play, parents connect, neighbors become friends. It's one of those rare spaces that truly brings people together and makes our community feel more connected. So as you think about the future of the post office site, I hope you'll keep families like ours in mind. The neighborhood has seen such a big influx of young families in the past few years, and spaces like Dwyer are more important than ever. It's just a park, but it's also a part of the daily rhythm of life here. I hope that whatever is being developed next door complements the park and helps it thrive. To get a little nitty-gritty, I'd love to see the village consider adding a public restroom, which would make the park much more family-friendly and accessible for everyone who uses it. I want to thank you for all the thought you're putting into this process. I just wanted to share how special Dwyer Park is to so many of us, and how much we hope the next phase of this project will strengthen the sense of community that already lives there. So thank you for keeping families and neighborhood spaces at the heart of your planning.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. Others on this side of the room? Come on up.
My name's Tim Van Tassel. I'm a 15-year resident. I love hearing you guys deliberate. It's really interesting to hear the detail you go into. I'll just say that I'm not in the parking space constituency. The best way to enjoy Winnetka is on foot or on a bike. And so live close by. Hate to see the idea of it being even a parking lot for a year or two. That makes me sad. That place is such a great congregational area. You're talking about sight lines. Couldn't agree more, right? Being able to see across that, the kids love it. It really is the heart of the place. So it'll be fun to see where this goes. Maybe the parking should go underground, but I would really hate to see that we would prioritize places to leave automobiles when all the kids are down there on their bikes, everybody's walking around. It's really just not the place for more parking from my perspective for surface area. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. How about on this side of the room? Mark, you want to come up?
Thank you. My name is Mark Hecht. I must say that after the May 10, 2022 study session, I remember thinking that, one, Chris Rinson's plan was a great plan, and I frankly thought it was a done deal. And I looked at that meeting again twice, yesterday and again today, and I was right. Every single trustee at the time was in favor. I don't know what happened in the next 3 years, but obviously it left me way behind, because I was very, very disappointed when I read tonight's agenda program, and it just downplayed the Chris Rince plan, which didn't show up until about page 59. I think I'd like to just repeat some thoughts that came out of that 2022 meeting, I think, that I took out of it, and throw out some ideas of my own. The first is my own idea. It wasn't mentioned in 2022. But I think, despite the additional costs of waiting, I think it's very, very important to make sure that you're doing the right thing. And I think that because of things that are going on in Winnetka, principally tremendous new, or for Winnetka, tremendous new construction at One Winnetka and in the Chase Bank building, I think it's very, very possible that the entire downtown situation may be changed in terms of congestion. And congestion over there and over here in One Winnetka, I think are going to impact what is done and how you do it at this space immediately behind us. And I think it's important.
Hey, Mark, we have 30 seconds, sorry. We have to adhere to the 3 minutes.
Well, I'm.
I apologize.
Okay, it's, I'll just stick with that point then. And I think it's important to wait, because I think it's important to see what is going on as a result of that new congestion, see what's the new development it's doing, not just speculate about what might happen. I have a lot of other thoughts, but my time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. What's that? Mark, if you would like to submit your comments in writing, we would appreciate that, actually. So if you get a chance, thank you. Others? Mark?
Yeah. Hi, Mark Heller. And I wanted to echo a couple of the comments that we've heard already. I think it would be, I know it's expensive, but if we can find a way to get the parking that we need underground and preserve the surface level area, it's a wonderful space. I agree with the parks, I agree with the views and so forth. I also think that maybe some consideration should be given to some type of building that we can afford, but that complements at the other end this building that we're in right now and respects some of the plans that were made many years ago. It doesn't mean it has to look like the same building, but I see that a lot of people want this area to be activated year-round. Year-round could include both setting up the park in a way that it has a lot of features that even can be used in the winter. But I've also seen some very interesting structures that include, that would be at a 2-story level, but would include, don't shoot me, domed areas over that would be glass that can allow people to be in the sun in the winter, and inside those buildings make them very open and very modular and very capable of being moved over the years to accommodate different elements, whether that's pop-up restaurant facilities or other things of that nature, educational things. So don't fix the building so that it's only the use that we can think of today, but keep it open. And that together with the parking and the possibility, I guess the other thing I would say is when you think about the plans, it would be great if we could get 3 or 4 very high-class firms to just take these parameters we have and give us some concepts. But on the cost basis, I'd say those parameters should be on a net basis. So if they have some ideas that can include, this is a big space, especially if you put the parking underground. We could have some limited retail along Elm, which would create a corridor there similar to the other corridors. And we could have a nice building here that complements, and we could have a very large amount of park space then all around, which could be developed. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts. I did put them in writing in a few little doodles and so forth, which I sent to Kristen, so you can look at them at your leisure. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate that. Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Jeffrey Liss. I've been a Winnetka resident for more than 4 decades, and I have also been following this for more than 2 decades, and I've been following the library for 2 decades. I attend their meetings regularly. They're a little more fun than here sometimes. Just a couple of things up front. Library, as best I can tell, really has no interest whatsoever in moving. And you can probably confirm that. They have a lot of plans for what they're doing. In fact, they've just been redoing their library here. Secondly, about underground parking. This has come up a number of times. In particular, it came up when they were talking about building another parking garage just south of where the existing parking garage is. And they thought was they'd have an underground parking that would have a direct access to the train platform. And then they also talked about underground parking in connection with the post office site. The consensus, as I recall from those meetings, is people basically thought that Winnetkins would not be happy shopping or temporarily parking in an underground facility here. And whether it's true or not, that's something you really have to keep in consideration whatever you do. I have an alternate plan on that, just depending on what you're putting, is put some things on stilts over the parking area. So that's still surface, and you still have all the signature space to do something. Now, about my comments, I looked at this stuff. Let me look at the numbers from the caucus poll. First of all, in my experience, for 20 years, there's been a hardcore group of Winnetkins who want green space in that park. 25%. Almost any time you'll find 25%. Generally, everybody else wanted some kind of commercial development. And if you wanted to analyze it, you'd say, well, there are 2 choices, grass and non-grass. And then you have to decide subset, do you want commercial only, or do you want commercial and residential? If you want commercial and residential, what kind of residential do you want? Townhomes? Townhomes might look funny in downtown Winnetka. I don't know. But that's the way I would organize my thinking on that. Now, look at these statistics. It says 16.8% want to congregate with indoor-outdoor flexibility. Well, I do believe that you have a community house that does the indoor stuff.
Jeffrey, 30 seconds, please. Sorry.
Okay, well, I think that's a bogus group. It doesn't exist because you're not going to build a community house in the center of that area. So basically, you've got the 1/4 and the 3/4. And you have to ask the question, going back to the 2022 plan, who gains for it? What use will it get? And if you look at that in more detail, it doesn't make any real sense. You've got parks everywhere for people who want it. And most of all, you've got Village Green Park and Hubbard Woods Park for other people to go from a distance.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for that. Would anyone else like to speak in public comment here? No? Okay, we will close public comment, bring it up here. Kirk, do you want to mention your thought on the green space that would be option 1 for the demolition?
The temporary.
The temporary.
Sure. Do you mind rolling back to the option 1? So when we met with staff, as assuming, I don't want to deviate, but, Tina, you brought up a good point. What if we just left the building that we have there until we make a decision? I think that's what you were suggesting.
Or we could also just demo to the foundation, not that that's pretty, and leave the grade differential there.
It might present some other safety issues and temporary fencing that might look more unsightly than just leaving the building mothballed. But as it relates to let's say, just tearing down the building, putting some temporary fill in, putting grass in there versus the parking lot, if you're asking what my comments were on this specific option, I personally am in favor of doing this. I think it, number one, it allows the whole community to better visualize exactly what could be there in the future without a building blocking the view. But secondly, my suggestion on this temporary solution would be to add 2 4-foot wide, or whatever the right width is, east-west sidewalks that abut the new parking that would be created essentially on the page, 2 lines running up on either side, just for access and safety purposes for folks that are using the parking lot, and also just as an overhang for car bumpers instead of being over the grass. And in the winter, it's just easy to get, strollers and folks out of the parking lot to the sidewalk to then get to Chestnut.
I think you're right on the, I think you're right on the money. I think putting a Walmart parking lot in there is not an option for this village in the middle of our town.
Well, I'll just add my personal concern, if you roll to the all parking lot temporary option, my concern with the all parking version is that once we have parking, we can't take it away. And I mean, it's, and also the reality is, right, that feels like it could easily be a permanent solution that everyone knows they would need, but not necessarily want. And I get a little concerned about, whatever, leading the cause by doing this.
That's not good.
Well, is there any semi-consensus around that temporary green space concept if we demolish?
Plus the sidewalks. I think that-
And the sidewalks?
Great, I think that sounds great.
I mean, if we're saying best case, and I take your expertise, right? If our best case is end of '27 before we start a permanent solution, I'm not sure I'd like the idea of having that just sit there empty. Let's go with the green space option. There is some duplicative costs, but I think it's, it's better.
It'd be nice to know what the duplicative costs are, to your point.
Well, the biggest one is you're hauling dirt onto the site, because it's not like you're balancing
Tim,
the
do you
site,
have those? I
right?
mean, we heard the demo's 175, what's the
Sod
component?
Yeah,
Again,
so basically, if you're looking at the cost estimate for number one, to do the building demolition, which would include the asbestos remediation, that's 175. Then you're looking at about 25,000 to site level. That means filling it with clay, about 25,000. And then there's the site restoration with the, oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. I opened up the wrong one, excuse me here. My apologies.
Because you're going to sod, you're not going to spray seed.
Correct, yep.
Because it won't look good, so.
Correct, yep. And then there's, we can add the parking component, so there's site restoration, and then you're looking at, there's some potential electrical costs in here to improve some of the lighting that's in that area right now. Even if you have grass, you still need to improve some of that. So that's all rolled up into that. That's the 592. We're carrying a small contingency.
Okay. I think we also have to look at it that they're not necessarily wasted costs for 1 to potentially 2 years. We're buying the community a lovely open space to walk through, to sit in the sun, to do whatever. So, I mean, there is a intangible benefit to having that open space for a couple of years.
Does anyone remember the last 10 years with the empty building sitting where One Winnetka was?
No, I don't
I mean,
remember
I
that.
don't think that we got more commentary and more discussed about anything than that empty building sitting there. So I would say that it is money well spent to
Plus,
tear this down. I mean, people would have paid $1 million probably to have not looked at that.
well, the good
for
part
that long.
is, we actually control this land, so
Right.
now, so we will be able to do that, absolutely. Good point.
The one thing that I would note for this is that there are, sorry.
No, you
Sorry. The one thing that I would note on this is that what's not included, this is the long-term maintenance costs. So when you create an open green space, this would be something that would be added to our landscaping contractor, which is currently Christie Weber, and we're going to go out to bid, so that could change. But there will be ongoing costs associated with that. And then if there's repairs that have to be made. And if you create a green space that's open, there'll be maintenance to it. If it gets worn out, that's regular maintenance of it. Is there watering? What's the expectation of what the grass looks like? Is it maintained like a park? Is it maintained at a different, so that's just things we would need to work out, so the expectation with the landscaping contractor is clear. If there's watering that's included, there'd be cost for irrigation, so if it's in the center of town, what's the look that the community would be looking for? Or would we treat it just like a regular park, like the open greens?
Well, I guess that's a good question, because do we have other parts in the village, just so we know, that we maintain versus the park district maintaining?
We do not.
Right, so this would be slightly different than that. Okay.
And Jim and Scott, would you envision that we would have benches and other amenities on this space, to Bridget's point or Kirk's point?
Our cost estimate does not include any other hardscape items, so that would
Okay.
be an expansion thereof. You could see how it would continue to grow.
Yeah, I
If
get a
there's
little
refuse
worried about
container-
over-programming the
Yeah,
temporary use.
yeah.
I didn't say anything about benches.
You didn't say anything about benches?
I did not
Thought
say anything
heard-
about
I thought I
benches.
heard you say something about
No.
benches.
Everyone can bring beach
Lawn,
blankets.
I retract.
lawn chairs and the village council mows
I was going to
lawn.
say lawn chairs and beach blankets, there you go.
Well, I will say this, something similar happened in Wilmette, where, they bought the Ford site, and then it was caught, they ended up buying as part of, the litigation settlement. And prior to that building going up, which I'm not suggesting that this would be the case, it became hard, right? Once you have a green space to, just as once you build a temporary parking, and I'm not suggesting that that's, whatever we do, there'll be people who get comfortable
Yeah.
with whatever that is, just so we all understand that.
So Jim, would you come to the budget session with a capital expense for this for 2026?
We do, yep.
Okay.
It would include the cost
And
breakdown.
would you be able to provide an estimate of upkeep and maintenance
We can
at
work-
some point?
Yeah, we can work with our landscaping contractor to try to come up with what we think an annual cost might be. It could just vary, though, depending on that level of expectation. If we treated it like a park, I can come back as part of the budget and say, now, if we treated this like a park and we did cutting once a week, and so this is what cost A would be. If we were thinking supplemental types of things, waterings and blah, 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 I
So
can,
it would have to look nice. I mean, there's no question, and I think you need to add the sidewalks that Kirk was talking about.
yep, that would be a cost that's not included in this, so we can come up with an estimate of what that would be.
Okay, well, why don't we, Scott?
No, you
I was going to say, why don't we proceed, is everyone comfortable proceeding on that basis?
Yeah, can I,
Temporary
didn't
open
we
space.
have this in the budget for this year?
We have the grass concept that's in the budget as
For
part
this
of.
calendar year?
No, not 2025.
Got it. For
2026. We're
26.
proposing it for 2026.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you are correct. There was a dollar allocation for the demolition of the building and then leveling of the site, and that's getting rolled into 2026.
Okay, all right, so that's policy direction on the current facility. And for policy direction on the future, are we okay with option 2, with Scott looking and Kristen looking into a couple different firms or what have you, setting some parameters that, we can circulate amongst the council, get a sense of that, and go out to the public? I think we do need to get some input on this, and maybe it comes back that Bennett plan is the plan, but I feel like we need to narrow that down a little bit. Scott?
And even within the concept of the Bennett plan, right, it's like, well, what is it? Is it the whole block? Do we put everything underground? I
Correct.
think those are options. The other question I have, and I'm not looking for an answer here, but I think as part of any planning process, it's been brought up, public-private partnerships. And I'm not sure how that was explored, how much detail was put into that. But kind of in parallel, we're going to have to be thinking about what that might look like so that when we get to the end point, we say, well, here's a $20 million option, but it's only net 10, or here's a $10 million option that's, you know.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think we realized how smooth we were able to get Tala through because we own the property. This property is in the middle of our town, and if we ever want it back, or if we ever want to use it and preserve that right for future generations, what does that mean? How much is that worth to this village?
Right. It's worth a lot. Is everyone okay going in that direction? Scott, does that give you a roadmap a little bit here to?
Yeah, I think we get some cost options for the public engagement side, and then maybe come back to you with some parameters, or talk about the parameters that you'd want in there.
Okay.
And one parameter I hope will be that this is going to be a pretty contained, not quick, I don't want to shortchange it, but it's not going to drag out forever
No.
process. Okay.
Not
No,
3
no.
years.
No, we're not going to drag this out.
Can we be,
Put a lot of advertising around it, get a lot of people that come quickly, and
Correct.
close the ballot box or whatever.
can we be specific? I mean, option 2 is to contract with a consultant to go through this process. Is the expectation that staff is going to come back to us before they contract, or do we need to approve anything at this point?
I think you said we could run by the parameters.
Yeah.
Do we want
You know, I kind of think it could be an agenda item
Yeah.
when you bring a contract back.
And the contract itself would depend on the cost. If it's above 50,000, then we would definitely need to bring it back. And then we could include the parameters at that time.
Okay.
Well, don't try to make it be more than 15, just so it can come to council. We'll figure out a way to do it.
We got a roadmap? Okay, all right. Thank you, everybody. There is no closed session tonight. And item 5, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Second?
That is a voice vote. All in favor?
Hi.
Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, guys. It'll be so exciting.